I'm going to kind of structure it around here. So, you want to just right. So, who I know Sam's come across OKRs before because we talked about those. I know Catherine, you and I have talked about them. We've had a chat. Yes. Anybody else? Well, actually, yeah, we've had a chat about them before. Yeah. Besides you three, has anybody come across OKRs before? Objectives and key results. Well, yes, in our conversations. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, very, very, very quick potted history. OKRs grew out of the tech sector. You can trace them back to Intel and Google and so on and so forth. Unsurprisingly, Google very good at promoting themselves and what they do. They haven't been quiet about using them. They've really, if you, funnily enough, Google OKRs, you'll find plenty of stuff about how Google have used them themselves. And what's happened is, the early adopters in Silicon Valley decided to change the way that they very much driven by the speed of change and the speed of business in that sector, and the need for them to be hugely agile and be able to pivot very quickly. They needed a way of making sure that people were working on the right thing at the right time, and that if they needed to change, the business needed that quick change, that they could affect that, they could get the people to change direction really quickly as well. Not to mention there's the whole issue around comparing how goal setting has traditionally been done typically on an annual basis, and how that is a very unengaging and very often demotivating way of setting someone's objectives for the year. So OKRs are actually, I would argue, they are a philosophy more than they are a model. They are a different approach, a belief that there is a different way of managing performance. And in fact, something that I only published last week, and I'm happy to share this around, such is the importance of these principles that underpin OKRs. I've actually published a manifesto, right, about what OKRs stand for. And part of our process when we onboard a client is actually to give them a version of this, not exactly this same version, but give them a version of this and actually get them to sign up to it. Because these principles, they need to buy into these if they're going to be successful with OKRs. Because one of the big risks, one of the most common mistakes that I see is somebody seeing OKRs as just a new tool, and often they'll go and find a system, a web-based system somewhere, because there are quite a few OKR systems out there. We work with a few of them, and they are good at what they do, but they think, oh, we can just put this new system in and it will change everything, and it doesn't, because they don't do this stuff. They don't appreciate the cultural change which is required. So I'm happy to, if you just want to pass these around, you're welcome to take a copy. So all right, it is a three-letter acronym. It does stand for Objectives and Key Results, but it's much more than a different way of articulating objectives, okay? And it goes something like this. So you start, I often draw this as a small circle, then a larger circle, then an even bigger circle, okay? And ultimately, what we want at the top is traction, okay? This is what we want. We want traction, we want performance, we want outcomes, we want results, okay? Now, what we've got, and I'm purposely drawing it from the bottom up here, what we've got here, because often you see it sort of cascading down, but I think it should be driven up. So what we've got here is we've got the business plan, strategy, vision, okay? So you've got the business. So this is what is typically, when we work with clients, we get them to look at that on a 12-monthly basis, okay? Minimum 12-monthly basis, they should be looking at the business plan and strategy. And within that, they set 12-month OKRs, right? And those become the priorities for the business. Then the next thing that's done is they create 90-day OKRs. And I'll go into the structure of OKRs in a second. I'm just looking at the wider structure of how this all fits together first. So they create 90-day OKRs, and which means that you've gone from a 12-month cycle to a 3-month cycle that sits within it. And these are usually at business level, team level and individual level, although some businesses do decide not to put it down to individual level, but I challenge that because a big part of OKRs is accountability, and I believe that if you're only pushing OKRs down to team level, then you're not getting that real alignment, because that is a very big part of OKRs, that people are aligned to what's in the plan. Okay, and then so you've got business level, team level, individual level, 90-day OKRs, and then this is where this is the real important part. This is the difference. Okay, certainly in the way that we do OKRs, because it's probably worth just mentioning, there's no instruction book for this. This is a group of practices, this is a group of best practices that have evolved. And it's interesting that it came from the software sector, because I guess you've probably heard of the term open source in relation to software. So that's obviously software which is not subject to a license that anybody can use, and so on and so forth. This is open source in terms of a business model. There's no professor sat in a business school, typically in America somewhere, that's making a lot of money off this every time you use it. It really is kind of crowdsourced. Okay, so the flavour which I'm explaining to you tonight, I'm just going to say this is not the only way of doing it. I feel that it certainly aligns to a lot of the principles of OKRs, but like I said, there are variations on this. And some businesses, for instance, choose not to push objectives down to individual level. Like I say, I would personally challenge that, but that's their decision. Now, this cycle, this cadence, right? Remember, we've got this one which is 90 days. This one is typically 2 weeks. Okay, that's typically 2 weeks. And I'm going to, because I've only got a limited amount of space on here, I'm going to just wipe this off and show you and sketch out what that 2 weeks looks like. Any of you come across agile project management? Yeah? You come across the term sprinting? Yeah? Okay. Well, this might look a little bit familiar. So we've got a 2 week period. This is day 1. That's day 14. Okay. Now the context for this is obviously we've got our 90-day OKRs. Okay. So within these, if they've been set right, will be the business priorities. They'll be well articulated. There'll be clear measures against them. So the team who are going to be doing this 2 week sprint will have these, will each have their individual OKRs, and they'll know what they need to be doing to move the needle on those. So what happens is at the start on Monday morning of that first week here, they make a whole bunch of commitments. And they also talk about confidence. And when I say confidence, that's the confidence that they're going to actually complete their OKRs within the time period. And they make the commitments, and it works really well if this is done. If you've worked in manufacturing and done transformation projects, you'll probably see a little bit of lean in this as well, because when they make commitments, it works really well if you do that as a Kanban.
I mean, exactly this model is what I just implemented
right.
in my last project.
Well, please do pipe up if you see anything that you want to contribute. So, has anybody heard of Kanban before?
No.
Right. Okay. It's super simple. It actually comes from Toyota's approach to manufacturing, lean manufacturing. So, if you imagine this is a team that are on Monday morning and they're working out what their commitments are and so on and so forth, and on the wall, on a whiteboard somewhere, they have it split into columns, okay? And the commitments or pieces of work or whatever they may call them are all, on post-it notes here. And this will be something like waiting to start, in progress, this one could be
shipped,
sign off, and that could be complete. Okay, and the point being that what you're trying to do is obviously move everything over to there. Okay, so when something's in progress, it gets moved on to there, and then hopefully it then eventually gets moved on to the next one, and then finally on to sign off. And the beauty of this is it's visual, and there's actually something quite psychologically rewarding in moving things, from one stage to another. As I said, this works really well if it's just done on a whiteboard, so it doesn't need technology. But if you have a dispersed team that work remotely, then using a tool like Trello, for instance, something that you can create cards in and just drag them across, that works just as well. Okay.
Can I say this, Roger, if you don't mind, just about the work in progress, about having a work in progress limit?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which is, I found really valuable personally, and in organisations normally, visualisation of your work is a massive benefit, but also limiting your work in progress. So there'll only ever be maybe 3 things in your work in progress column at any one time. Kind of that principle, messy column, messy life. Your options column, your backlog can be as busy as you like, but your work in progress is only 3.
Yeah,
I know that can vary, and it differs sometimes depending on your application.
Yeah, and the beauty of this is that what you're doing at the beginning of this 2-week period is going, what can we complete within these 2 weeks, right? And it may be that you've got a huge long list of stuff on here, and you're not actually going to expect to get all that done. Right, so what is it that we're going to get done? Well, actually, we're only going to focus on these 2 over the next 2 weeks. This one, that one can wait, all right, for the next sprint or the sprint after that. So we're just going to move these 2 in. So you're right, you are managing capacity. So they make the commitments and they start off. They may decide halfway through that they might have a check-in. It's probably a good idea, because if you get to the end of the period and and you've not and you've missed on something, then it's a bit late to correct it. So you get to the end, and this meeting, this gathering is far more about recognising progress that's been made, and in many respects celebrating that, learning from the misses, and making sure that learning is rolled back for the next one, that starts. So you get into this routine, and what we tend to find is that, because of what Sam said there, that you basically clear the decks and you're only focusing on what you can complete within that 2 weeks. It actually clears people's minds. Now, I'm not saying that business as usual doesn't happen. Of course that happens. This actually brings me on to my next point about what goes into an OKR. Because if you think that, if you kind of view it that what I've just taken you through there is kind of how they work structurally, let's just think for a moment how they work in terms of what goes into them.
Is it specific, Roger, that it needs to be a 2-week time frame?
No, it doesn't, but if it goes for any longer than that, then it starts to get a little bit loose.
What about less?
Oh yeah, yeah. If the drumbeat of the business warrants it, it could be weekly.
Okay.
Just yeah. I mean, the beauty of this is that a very large part of certainly how we approach OKRs is testing, learning, and adapting. Okay, so if you start with a weekly cadence and find actually it's a bit like overkill, well, fine, just move it to 2 weeks. You know, it's very much about getting people out of this fixed mindset that oh right, well, you know, we've got to be careful about making this decision because there's no way we can't change it. You know, so yeah, it can be if it needs to be, definitely.
I mean, I would agree with what you mentioned. I found as well, from a experience perspective, a 2 weekly drumbeat is quite beneficial because you mentioned before accountability of the individual, because at the beginning of the 2 week period, it's basically a kind of like a contract between the team leader and the individual. Okay, over the next 2 weeks, we agree on these are the goals. And you can have informal check-ins along the way. Then what I tend to do is I have a formal check-in after a team meeting after 1 week, just to make sure everyone is within the team is on target, any problems, any adjustments which have to be made in order to make sure that everything gets completed by the end of the 2 weeks. But I find as well the bi-weekly time frame is actually quite good. It's a short enough time horizon not to lose it, but it also gives enough flexibility to the individual to move work packages around.
Exactly.
Because there's always, I mean, we all know from day-to-day life, there's always something happening, an incident which gets the work package delayed or anything.
Life is curly, right?
Yeah, it's curly. So, what constitutes a good OKR? Well, I'm glad you asked me because I'm going to tell you. All right. So, good OKRs are either growth or change, well, and or change orientated. Okay. It's not, absolutely not about delivering business as usual, right? OKRs are not there to be written to say, right, just get your day job done. They're not. They're about driving growth or change that are going to take the business or the organisation forward. Which is why, when you think about what was on the Kanban, if you look at if an OKR Kanban's been set up well, you won't find regular day-to-day stuff on there. It'll be mini projects, mini initiatives, okay? Things that are being tried, you know, to find new ways of working, new processes, that sort of thing, okay? And the way that you check whether it is growth or change is it's got to tick at least one of these, all right? It's got to be, sorry it's so squeaky, something new, all right? So obviously that constitutes a change. Something differently, okay, doing something differently, or a significant increase. Okay, so it's got to be either something new, it's got to be, or something, it's being challenged to do something differently, or being challenged to deliver a significant increase over what's been delivered previously.
Can I ask a question, just to take a step back? Is okay? It seems I've never heard of OKRs before, so this is the first time I've come across it, and it's very much it's about objectives and achieving results within from a performance perspective. This 2-week period, it seems to be, I'm misunderstanding, but it seems to be more a project-orientated, how to deliver a project, almost like an agile type of project. How does that fit in with the performance management aspect of delivering goals and objectives to the team members and to develop? How's that fit?
Okay, just bear with me.
Okay,
I shall come to that. So, so that's what makes a good OKR. In terms of how it fits in with performance management, all right. Well, my view, this is, feel free to disagree with me, but my view is that performance management comprises mainly of, principally of three things: goal management, evaluation, and I'm going to call this one growth. But by growth, I mean learning and development of the individual, and consequently, obviously, their capabilities and the benefit to the business.
So professional development.
Yeah, I would put professional development under that. Yeah. Now, in terms of the overall activity, I would say, obviously, this is where OKRs come in, because it's a way of managing goals. And I would say that in terms of the weighting, in terms of the amount of time that you spend on performance management, I would say this should be about 80% of it. Probably isn't. I bet the evaluation part probably takes a lot more.
100%.
A lot more. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now, in terms of how it fits in. How much time have we got? Right, I've got 5 minutes. Right, let me see if I can answer this for you in 5 minutes. So, you're having those fortnightly sprints, right? Which means that with each one of those, you're moving. The outcome of those sprints should be that you're moving your needles on your objectives and key results a little bit more. Yeah, okay. So by the end of that 90-day period, which those OKRs last for, you should be fairly close to completion, if not fully complete on them. Okay. Now, in terms of how that fits into performance management, this is where we have a whole model which sits behind this. We give clients what we call the blueprint to start them off. This is what we recommend you do within the 2-week time frame. This is what we recommend you should be doing in the 3-month time frame. And every 2 weeks we recommend an individual check-in, okay? Which these are very, very brief check-ins. They're not meetings, right? They are check-ins. So 15 minutes tops, okay? But it just gives the individual and their manager a chance to just have an opportunity to kind of round up on any feedback that might need to be given if it's not being given in the moment, okay? And then every quarter we recommend, and this is where we're getting into the evaluation part, we recommend that there is a general evaluation that is done around that individual using a question set which we help the client to adapt for them to use themselves. And I can go into details on that if you want me to, but I'm just conscious that we're nearly at 6 o'clock now. I tell you what I'll do to probably finish off that for you. We can either have a chat later on, or I can send a paper. Are you on the Slack group? Because we have a
no.
Right. Okay. For those of you that are not on it, we have a Slack channel, okay, for people to keep in touch with in between the sessions. I'll happily share what those 4 questions are, okay. But they're designed so that they're an overall evaluation of an individual's performance without directly linking them to attainment against objectives. Because, and this is to some degree a little contentious, certainly in terms of traditional performance management, but I very, very much believe that you should not directly link attainment against objectives to any sort of pay or reward calculation. Okay?
Decouple goals from reward.
Yeah. I'm not saying you don't pay for performance. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it needs to be a more holistic evaluation. Okay? Because a big part of OKRs is actually getting people to innovate, get people to try new things out. And if you're going to encourage them to do that, they have to, not all the time, but they have to feel safe to fail. And if their score against their objective is directly linked to their pay grade or their bonus calculation, are they going to want to try something risky? Are they going to want to try and do something which could put their bonus in jeopardy? They're not, of course.
I think from my perspective, I mean, the puzzle and the problem that we've got here at the co-op is that performance management is absolutely hardwired into pay and bonus, and we're trying to find a way of trying to decouple that as much as possible. But in terms of what you just said there about are they wanting to go to try something and do something risky and so on, that's almost, I agree with you, but I think that's almost as well that it depends on the environment, the manager that they're having that conversation with. It depends on the level of trust that's given to them, the level of remit that's open to them.
There's
to say,
a lot more to it.
Yeah, actually, we want you to do that, and if it doesn't work out, we accept that we want you to keep trying things, and that's the whole.
It's a complex job that they're doing.
Yeah.
It's got lots of variables that you can't. I think it's risky for that reason as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you should give them, they can't necessarily carte blanche and that they can go crazy.
Yeah.
It's about taking risks, it's about experimenting, it's about testing within some defined parameters.
It's your culture of your organisation, though, isn't it? That's what it comes down to, and whether that.
I would look at what we have on this manifesto here, and then imagine how do we get these 15 things here? How do we believe in this if we hardwire your objectives into your pay? This is where it doesn't happen.
Is it not the expectation of the individual though? If they're achieving their objectives, they're going to want some financial reward for that.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't be.
I know, I agree you should.
I'm not saying that there shouldn't be.
I just think it shouldn't be the only measure. I think there's always a connection, but you just think about it more holistically. So these are the dangerous behaviours that I've observed when it's kind of, when the rule is you've got to get 80% on all your OKRs and you'll get your bonus, is that all of us, you look at, these are really easy, right? I thought we were supposed to be ambitious. I thought performance was about improving. Individuals improve the system by these small inch pebbles. All of a sudden nobody wants to do that anymore because pay is a real emotive thing, especially in not-for-profit where you don't necessarily get paid that much.
And it's not a motivator really, is it?
It's a demotivator, which is why it's really hard when you've got it. You've got the hardwire, and I think I would be far more cautious in your shoes than I am in mine, where we don't have that. We don't have a bonus or a variable pay culture, and actually we don't want it. So we kind of got a gift, I guess, that we don't have to break that and feel like people are having something taken away.
So if pay is not there to reward, what would you use instead? Promotions and how would you reward?
I guess your reward mechanisms, again, your reward systems have to reflect the culture that you're after also. So I wouldn't sort of be looking at that as a one-size-fits-all lift and shift kind of system. But I think if you look at what really motivates people, look at maybe the work of Dan Pink or somebody, autonomy, mastery, purpose, that kind of thing. And
it's not, you mean just saying not only pay, but other things involved.
It's more, and actually, and we're still going to ask the questions that look more holistically. So we pay people based on performance, but acknowledging that the goal is just part of reward the behaviours, not the outcome. Right?
Feel valued in other ways.
Yeah, and that it's more regular. Again, if our pay is only going to increase on a 12-monthly basis, we can't only reward people on a 12-monthly basis. That's as nonsensical as only setting individual goals on a 12-monthly basis.
I mean, one needs to be. I think one of the dangers is that quite often this kind of reward systems are not very transparent, and I think transparency, as it's also mentioned here, is quite important. Picking up on one of the comments you made before,
yes,
regarding attainment,
yes,
attainment of the goals. Would you say it is good practice to be transparent about it and to have it on an individual and a team level, to have it actually out there in the public, in the domain?
Do you mean in terms of
attainment?
Somebody's attainment against goals?
Yeah.
Yes. I would say that should be the default. I do, however, recognise there are times where some goals or objectives may need to be private, confidential, maybe because they're commercially sensitive or personally sensitive. But I believe that the default position should be transparency.
Yeah, I mean, you could always go back to numbers. I'm asking because one of the things which in past projects we have implemented was trying to anonymize the goals to a respect of, okay, it's just numbers. For example, work packages, if you can break it down into work packages, for example, and then you can just count it, and you can also count the days of delay, for example, how much slack did I had in the delivery of those work packages. And once you can anonymize it with the numbers, then it becomes less of a commercial sensitivity issue. And also from a personal perspective.
Less emotive.
Less. What I found, that's the reason why I asked, I found it actually quite motivating from a performance perspective. Once people saw, all right, this is how our team is performing against another team, and how do we perform individually, they actually took pride in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's because we are
internal competition.
Internal
competition
competition.
Very good. Yeah.
Into the social motivators that are at play there. Absolutely.
And we are coming then into this reward system because, as you mentioned, pay is not necessarily always one of